Okay, science fiction writers have often and for a long time considered technologies that could read from the brain or maybe write to the brain and influence behavior. But these kind of technologies are becoming a reality now. To take an example of currently existing technology, it's possible for neurotechnologies to monitor the brain as a person watches a movie, then decode the neural activity and make a kind of hazy reconstruction in real time only from the brain waves of the video that the movie that the person is watching. Some people with epilepsy that is drug resistant now have a brain implant that just sits in the background doing nothing most of the time. And when it notices the neural patterns associated with an epileptic fit, one that's about to come, it acts to stimulate the brain to prevent the epileptic fit from taking place. Other people with Parkinson's disease have brain implants that can stop their tremors. So this is, of course, this is incredible, and it's a wonderful thing. But I think there's also a downside to neurotechnology, and I think this is something that needs to be considered and something that raises human rights concerns. And that's going to be the focus of what I'm saying. So to think about this a bit differently, we can go back and start by having a look at the aftermath to World War II. After the horrors of industrial-scale death camps in the Nazi regime and the devastation caused by a new technology, the nuclear bomb, it's not surprising that the international community was minded to try and do something about it after the war. And they set up the United Nations, aimed at preventing further wars and preventing these terrible industrial-scale human rights violations that now seem possible, or that now were possible. One of the first things that the United Nations did was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights back in 1948. Now, this is a very important human rights document, the most important one in the world, and it's influenced legal systems around the world, including our own. And really what it tries to do is constrain the abuse of power in the hope that human rights abuses of the kind that were experienced in World War II wouldn't happen again. That's its aim. But it was a long time ago, and if we think about the drafting committee back in the aftermath to World War II, they didn't envisage the kind of technologies that could read from the brain, decode mental images that a person's experiencing, maybe even stimulate the brain to influence behavior or even to affect what a person perceives. How could they? They couldn't. It just wasn't possible. And so I think that there are some issues to be considered that they weren't able to consider. So now there are newer technologies that are developing at quite a pace from companies like Meta and various others and the military. And we have to ask, what kind of ethical oversight is this neurotechnology getting? And we also have to ask, is the post-World War II human rights framework, is that still fit for purpose? I'd say maybe not. Before we get back to the dark side of neurotechnology, I want to say something again about the upside, because there's tremendous upside. So if you think about a person with locked-in syndrome, so a neurological condition where a person might not be able to control their muscle system to, say, move their arm or to even talk or perhaps even blink an eyelid to communicate. Now, some people with locked-in syndrome have a brain implant that decodes the mental activity associated with certain commands, and they can control the cursor and they can compose email, they can communicate, and they can perhaps use a robotic arm to feed themselves. That's returning autonomy to a person who badly needs it. And in my view, it's nothing short of miraculous. It's a wonderful thing. And so we need to bear in mind some of the tremendous upside of neurotechnology when we need to think about what to do about it. Other forms of neurotechnology don't just focus on therapy. So, for example, there are some companies that are involved in creating external headsets that decode neuroactivity associated with commands to a video game, so a person can play video games using this bit of neurotech. Perhaps one day it might be possible to interact with the metaverse. There's a lot of talk about the metaverse right now, and the company Meta is, of course, very focused on that. And that might bring us a little bit closer to the world of the Matrix if neurotechnology was a good way of getting into the metaverse, which it might be. The military have long been interested in neurotechnology. There's the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, which is a military institution in America, and they've long had neurotech programs. And what might happen is we might see the battlefield of the future involving cognitively enhanced super soldiers that can perhaps pay attention longer than their adversary on the battlefield, and perhaps they can control a drone swarm by mental act and go through the battlefield carrying their weapon with a drone swarm ahead and some augmented reality glasses. Then we might think about the workplace. So during the pandemic, the trend to sort of workplace surveillance of workers seemed to ramp up. When did you log on the computer? When did you log off? It now might be possible to, well, it now is possible to monitor workers' attention. So some companies are using external headsets on, say, a worker that is driving a heavy goods vehicle or perhaps an air traffic controller in order to monitor their brains for sign of inattention. And of course, this has got a health and safety aim. I can imagine a neurotechnological trend emerging where workplace brain monitoring becomes rather more common than it currently is. And then think about criminal justice. I lecture in criminal law. We already use technology to monitor offenders in the community. So if you're subject to an intensive corrections order, you might go home and walk around in some restricted area with an ankle bracelet that monitors your geographical location. So why not just go a bit further? Why not monitor the brain? And then if an offender starts to get impulsive, why not just electrically stimulate the brain to calm them down? Or even better, just automate it so that no human needs to be involved. But that's very concerning. So there's great human rights concerns there, isn't there? It's very troubling. What about the mental privacy of workers? What about the mental privacy of offenders? Don't they deserve some kind of protection of mental privacy? If the device stimulates their brain, then it's a threat to autonomy. Do you still have free will? Of course, back in the mid-1940s, when they were considering the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they didn't consider that. It wasn't possible to consider it. Should we worry now? So who's investing? So Meta has acquired a company called Control Labs. Elon Musk has got Neuralink. Silicon Valley billionaire and Trump backer Peter Thiel has invested in BlackRock Neurotech. DARPA, the military institution, has been long investing in neurotech. So there's quite a few organizations that you might think, well, a bit of regulation might not be such a bad thing. But we don't want to lose the health benefits. You know, if we get Parkinson's or some neurological condition or psychiatric condition, we want some neurotech that will help us, and maybe the government might even fund it, or let's hope so. But whether we use neurotechnology to treat some kind of affliction that ails us, or to play games or fight wars, we should be aware that whatever institution runs the neurotech, they're going to be gathering data, and they're going to know more about us, and with knowledge comes power. And particularly if devices electrically stimulate the brain, then we become more subject to manipulation and possibly sort of puppet-like in our consumer behavior, our workplace behavior, or even our electoral behavior. So we might just think, well, let's just leave neurotech, we won't use it. But if you get some kind of neurological condition or psychiatric condition, that might be quite a painful choice to just say, oh, I'll just put up with the condition. Or if your workplace competitors are starting to gain an advantage over you because they can pay attention for longer, they are cognitively enhanced and you're not, it might be difficult to just resign yourself to being outdone in the workplace. And there could be, you know, significant downside to opting out. And so given that neurotechnologies are likely to become more prevalent in society, given the commercial investment and the technological advances, something needs to be done. What needs to be done? So the Chileans have got a current bill that's going through their legislative process at the moment called the Neuroprotection Bill. Maybe that's the right way to go. Or the Argentinians, they've also got a bill that's going through at the moment which is aimed at stopping the criminal justice authorities from non-consensually monitoring the brain of suspects. Maybe that's the way to go. Or maybe we should just wait and see what happens with the technology a bit longer. So I mentioned earlier the United Nations. So they, of course, didn't think about all of this when they were drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but it's on the agenda for the Human Rights Council now, and they're starting to think about it now. Whilst we're thinking, we'd better not think too long. So to take the example of Senator Girardi, who's been very influential in driving the change to Chilean law, he said, we didn't regulate the big social media and internet platforms in time, and it cost us. And it might be that if we don't regulate the neurotech companies in time, it might cost more. Now, famously, a man who does get things done is Mark Zuckerberg, who also has now has a neural interface company they've acquired, Control Labs, which is subsumed into Reality Labs. Mark Zuckerberg, he said, done is better than perfect. And I think when it comes to upgrading the human rights system that we've inherited since World War II, we might do well to take account of Mark Zuckerberg's done is better than perfect philosophy. What we need to do is we need to make laws to ensure that we do neurotechnology and that neurotechnology doesn't do us. Thanks very much.